The Legions of Athena. Chapter 31. There was a moment of absolute silence in the room as everyone watched the Aegis wall shatter like glass, with its pieces breaking and dissipating away before it reached the ground. Not even a trace of the barrier remained. Then the deathly silence was quickly replaced by chaos. The crowd was frantic and lost. They couldn't comprehend what they had seen. The Aegis wall, their impregnable barrier of defense, had just been destroyed. The soldiers were all in a total frenzy until Odysseus stepped forward and shouted, "What are you all waiting for? To your battle stations." That got everyone's attention. All the soldiers fell in line and returned to their posts. The war room had turned back into the well-oiled machine again. Odysseus may put up a brave face, but he too was in disbelief. He went over to the goddess along with Achilles, Theseus, and Pallas. That was Hercules. Odysseus said in a whisper audible only to the five of them, "Without a doubt, I knew the god king was favoring Ares, that he had helped the Martians within his storm. But this, to send his champion, means he has already decided the outcome of the war long before. He means to see me fall." Athena concluded. "Then the war is against Zeus," Achilles said grimly. "My defiance of the Skyfather's wishes, protecting Daedalus, investigating into my teacher's death. It seems losing Daedalus has angered him beyond control," Athena murmured. "Goddess, the Stymphalian riders, they have returned and are moments away," one of the soldiers shouted. "I'm on it," Icarus said. He strode to the castle announcement system and ordered 8th Legion to the sky. Right before he opened a part of the glass dome and flew out with a machine gun in each hand. But the birds were the least of their worries. Down on the ground, the Martians had reorganized their ranks and had begun their march to Athens. They were being led into battle by a huge chariot, but this time, instead of flesh-eating horses, this chariot was being pulled by 4 horses made of fire and bones. They looked like burning skeletons of horses, but they were very much alive. Inside the chariot, instead of the barbarian king, there rode a beast of a man clad in an ancient red and gold armor. His helmet sprouted a crimson plum that added to his already immense figure. The chariot itself was fitted with a Gatling gun, and over 8 spears were at the man's side. The man also had an enormous battle axe on his back, a sword on his waist, and a high-caliber assault rifle in one hand. Ares was leading the final charge himself. "We have to move quickly. Without the Aegis, the city's physical walls won't last for a second," Theseus said. "Ares and Hercules together will be too much to handle. We must take care of Hercules before Ares reaches him," Odysseus said. "He landed in the military sector of the city, and I have already dispatched the 1st Legion to confront him. But if even half the stories about him are true, they won't be enough." Athena closed her eyes for a moment to think. She said, "Odysseus, Achilles, Theseus, I want all 3 of you to go up against Hercules. Hold him back at any cost. Lady Pallas, issue the orders to evacuate the city." "But what of you?" questioned Pallas. "I will stay here in the castle. Ares will know to find me here," Athena said. "I think it is time the god and goddess of war put an end to this dance personally." Maximus and the others had just received word that the city was to be evacuated. "It sounds like Athena has already admitted defeat," Mia had whispered. Maximus had to admit, evacuating the city seemed like she was trying to save whatever she could of her people and not mounting a defense. Just as the 4 of them had grabbed all their things and stepped out of the war room, Achilles came and pulled Max aside. "Maximus, I am going to stay back to fight," Achilles confided. "Then let me help you." "I could," Max began, but Achilles cut him off. "No, but I do have an important task for you," Achilles said as he proceeded to pull out the small metal cube out of his pocket and gave it to Maximus. "I hate to burden you with this again, but if this is truly what Ares is searching for, then it needs to be as far away from the city as possible," Achilles said. Maximus wasn't happy about this, but he accepted the cube and nodded. "Also, Daedalus's order still stands. If you find a way to destroy it, then do it, although I fear that is easier said than done," Achilles added. "I promise I won't fail you," said his protege. Then Achilles gave him something else. It was a key, the key to the truck that they had driven to Athens, to be precise. "It's parked in the castle basement. It should help you escape from the city quicker." "And Maximus, one more thing," Achilles began to say, but he seemed to be at a loss of words. If Max didn't know any better, he would have said Achilles was showing a hint of emotion. Finally, the legendary warrior said, "Survive." That one word had shaken Maximus. Now it was he who couldn't speak. As Achilles began to walk away, Max shouted after him, "I will see you again, won't I?" Achilles turned, and Maximus couldn't believe that there was an actual smile on his face as he replied, "Nothing has killed me yet." Maximus and the others had reached the basement. They found the truck easy enough since most of the parking lot was empty. The truck was in much better shape than when they last saw it, with one of its wheels blown and the chassis riddled with bullet holes. "Looks like they fixed up the Badger," Hedger said. "Badger?" Mia asked. "I was getting tired of calling it the truck, so Badger. You know, since the chrome detailing on black looks like stripes, just like that of a badger," Hedger explained. "By that logic, shouldn't you call it the skunk?" Rex asked. "Badger's fine," said Mia. Maximus wasn't really listening in on the conversation. He was still bothered by what Achilles had said. His mentor had seemed worried, and the man hadn't even flinched at the sight of even Hermes. Then there was the man who crashed the Aegis. The cambots were too far away to make out his face, but Athena seemed to know who it was. Moreover, he had used a giant club. That, coupled with his ungodly strength, brought only one name to mind. They entered the Badger, and Max took to the wheel. Though the truck had started its life as a military transport vehicle, Ajax had completely transformed it back in Vulcan. Now the back portion housed 4 beds and even a small fridge. But at a time like this, these weren't the modifications Max was concerned about. He flicked a switch below the steering wheel, and 2 large caliber guns popped out from either side of the hood. "Good, they have ammunition," he said. "Will we need those?" Mia asked nervously. "I pray that we won't," Max said, "but it's better to have them ready, just in case." With that, they set off. Max did not find any guards at the castle gates this time, and in his rearview mirror, he did not see half the castle either. The Owl's Nest had lost its former glory, with all its grand towers currently lodged inside the carcass of the serpent Drakon. The scene outside was vastly different as well. The streets that had been too crowded to move in during the festival were all completely deserted now. Every once in a while, they did spot other people, but they too seemed to be trying to rush out of the city. "Looks like no one's home," Hedger commented. "Athena had the city evacuated at the start of the war, remember?" Mia said. "She probably had intel on the Drakon. A thing that big would have been hard to be kept secret. She must have sent everyone packing just in case she couldn't stop it," Rex added. "But she did stop it," Hedger said. "Are we going to ignore the fact that the Aegis which withstood the onslaught of a Drakon was taken down by one man? I know the picture wasn't very clear, but the huge club, that monstrous strength and a golden armor like the famous armor made from the golden skin of the Nemean lion. You think that was Hercules?" Mia asked. Maximus slammed the brakes, bringing the truck to a halt. He turned to the others and said, "We have to go back." The indecisiveness racking Max's brain had blown away hearing that name. Achilles was the greatest fighter Maximus had ever met, and probably the greatest swordsman of all time. But Hercules was a different story. He was neither man nor monster, he was something else. According to the rumors about him, they say not even the gods dared challenge him. He couldn't let Achilles go up against someone like that alone. "Go back? What do you mean go back?" Hedger asked. "To help Achilles. After all that he has done for us, we can't let him fight this one alone." Max began reversing the truck. He just couldn't abandon his teacher like that. "Max, stop," Rex said, but he wasn't listening. He was busy turning the Badger around. The other 3 were still telling him to stop, but Max was determined to get back. So Rex removed him from the driver's seat and tossed him to the pillion. He then grabbed his friend by the shoulders and said, "Max, look at me. I know you don't care about Athens, but this is Achilles we're talking about. Look at me." Rex shouted, and Max shut up. "Now I had half my body chopped off by an Athenian," Rex said, "and I've had to be in the same building as him all these days. Heck, I was in the same damn room as him moments ago. And do you know what I realized? Do you know what pained me the most?" Rex's eyes bored into Max. He had never seen him so serious before. "It wasn't that I was still powerless against him. It wasn't having to relive that memory each time I saw him. It was that he didn't even recognize me," said the Minotaur. Max calmed down at these words. Rex let him go and said, "Theseus, who had haunted my nightmares, didn't even know I existed, because that's what we are to them. Insignificant. Max, what you got to get through that thick skull of yours is that Theseus, Odysseus, Achilles, and all the other big names we've run across, these guys are immortals, and they have been fighting ever since my granddad was a toddler, some much before that. So what exactly are you going to do in a fight between demigods?" Maximus had no answer to that. "I get how you feel, but the truth is Achilles has a much better chance against Hercules and whatever else is out there if he doesn't have to worry about saving our asses," Rex said. "So the best thing we can do to help is to get the hell out of here." Max knew he was right. He didn't like it, but he knew it was the truth. In a battle of gods and immortals, he would only be in the way. Yet again, he felt so weak, so powerless. He would have to change that. They drove silently after that. They made good time through the empty streets, and soon they were far from the castle. They were heading for the southern gate, which was farthest away from battle. No one spoke, and Max didn't care. Every molecule in his body wanted to head back and fight. But he felt helpless. There was nothing he could do, just like how he could do nothing when Daedalus died. But then the road exploded. The Legions of Athena. Chapter 32. Odysseus had just got word that Ares had breached the outer walls and entered the city, but he couldn't be there to greet the invading forces, though he had sent the entire Minervian force to confront them, save for a part of the First Legion. He couldn't be there because he had a bigger threat to take care of. Odysseus was in his Mecca, traveling as fast as his metal legs could go, and he wasn't alone. Perched on his shoulder was Achilles in his pitch-black armor. He had already summoned his Terra Shield as well, and Odysseus had no doubt he would be needing it. Running along with them on all fours was Argos, his razor teeth ready for action, and leading the group on his motorcycle was Theseus, in his heavy armor and even heavier axe on his back. It wasn't hard to find the man they were searching for. He had created a crater leveling 3 buildings when he hit the ground. They had hoped that breaking the Aegis would have taken a toll on his battle prowess, But the scene on their arrival told a different story. Of the 9 mechas that had been sent to deal with the man when he arrived, 5 littered the ground destroyed beyond recognition or repair. The remaining 4, including the one driven by Elisha, were on the defensive from the man with the giant club. 2 of the mechas had pulled back and were firing high-caliber rounds at the Olympian champion, which did not even make him flinch, while Elisha and another charged at him together. He went for the other one first. A massive swing from the lion tamer had lobbed one of its legs clean, sending it kneeling to the ground. Then he jumped onto Elisha, smashing her metal giant into a building nearby. He then threw the lion tamer at the kneeling mecha like a javelin, which went straight through the chest plate, killing the driver inside. He turned to Elisha and ripped open her mecha's torso with his bare hands, and then plucked her out from the cockpit as easily as one would pick a flower. He was about to end her misery, but Odysseus and the others had just arrived, and he wasn't about to let his tyro die that easily. Odysseus threw his spear with the accuracy of a hawk straight at the Olympian's head, but the weapon did not meet its mark. Hercules had caught the spear inches away from his skin and tossed it aside. He then turned to his attacker and said, "Odysseus, I presume. Let her go." Odysseus replied, furious. But Hercules was not impressed. "And who are you to order Hercules?" he said, and proceeded to hurl Elisha into the air, literally sending her flying away from the line of sight. Odysseus wanted to help his tyro, but there was nothing he could do. He was helpless. All he could do was pray that her armor would save her from death. Being far away from this monster was best for her, assuming she had survived. Hercules leaped from the broken hull of the mecha back to the ground and retrieved his blood-soaked lion tamer from the body of the other to face the new arrivals. Theseus stepped off his bike as Argos circled around Hercules. Achilles had dismounted as well. The remaining 2 mechas held their fire, but their guns were still aimed at Hercules. Theseus stepped forward and spoke, "Hercules, it feels not so long ago that you and I fought against the forces of the underworld as comrades, and sailed across the 7 seas aboard as Argonauts to retrieve that wretched golden fleece. And now you come here and attack my home? You attack Athena, who aided you on countless quests?" "It is not personal," Hercules replied. "Orders were given from above. So the Skyfather sends you. He who promised that he would not interfere in the matter of nations. He who forbade war between Olympian gods and still let Ares so blatantly assault Athens." Theseus spat. "Do you not see the hypocrisy in that?" "It is not my place to question him," came the response. "And you are ever the loyal dog, are you not, Hercules?" mocked Theseus. Hercules placed his massive club on his shoulder and replied, "Theseus, given our past, I will forgive your insults and give you chance to walk away. And given our past, I find it insulting that you would assume that I would flee from a fight, even from you," Theseus said as he drew his great axe, the cattle prod, from his back. Achilles drew his blade, and Odysseus readied his lance and joined the Athenian champion on either side. The other two mechas readied their weapons as well, while Argos stood behind the Olympian ready to pounce. Hercules saw that he was surrounded for an attack from all sides, but he wasn't worried. Instead, he raised the lion tamer and whispered, "So be it." Max drove as best as he could as the surroundings kept exploding around him. They were no longer heading south. A building had collapsed onto the road they were traveling on, forcing them to change direction. They were no longer in real control of where they were heading. For the most part, they were just trying to escape the bombardment from above. Mars's long-range cannons were raining fire down upon Athens, and without the Aegis, they were turning the great city to rubble. "Max, we're heading west, towards the war," Mia said. "I'm just trying not to get blown to bits right now," Max answered. Presently, they were out of the cannon's range, but nowhere even close to exiting the city. He was just about to slow down and redirect the Badger when the sound of gunfire jolted him. Soon enough, they were spotted by Martian soldiers who opened fire immediately, forcing Maximus to race down the only path that was not blocked at the intersection. "Okay, we lost them," Hedger said, looking behind. "I'd say we're the ones who are lost," Mia remarked. She was right. Max had no idea where they were. He had brought the Badger to a slow crawl so as not to alert any more soldiers nearby. Looking at the surroundings, he guessed, "I think we're somewhere in the entertainment sector." "But the south gate is at the end of the residential area, right?" Mia asked. "The same area that Ares is stomping flat with his cannons," Rex added. "Maybe we should try one of the other exits." Hedger began, but then noticed that the Badger had stopped moving. One look out the windscreen, and they knew why. Up ahead, in one of the public parks, people were being rounded up. Athenian soldiers and civilians alike were assembled with their hands behind their heads, being forced into a line by crimson soldiers. Of the soldiers in red, two stood out. One floated in the air with a long staff in his hand and wearing a pointed crimson hood, and the other stood over 20 feet tall with bronze skin and wild black hair, holding an enormous machine gun and a bloody club slung across his back. The giant also seemed bandaged up in several places from fresh wounds. It was hard to mistake the two gods, Deimos and Phobos. "They haven't seen us yet," Hedger whispered, shaking in fear. "We could still slowly back out of here." But Max did not move the truck. He was still staring intently at the scene ahead. "They're lining them up for a firing squad," Rex said grimly. Max knew it too. Mars did not take a lot of prisoners of war. The official policy followed by Mars's commanders was to question prisoners for any information, promising to spare their lives if they cooperated, and then killing them regardless of whether they did. It was a tactic that sickened Max to the core. Now he felt it again, that weakness, that helplessness, the frustration of not being able to protect anyone. Only this time he was tired of doing nothing. As the giant Phobos readied his gun to end the prisoners personally, Max slammed the pedal down and sent the badger roaring towards the god of terror. Phobos spun around on hearing the noise only to be greeted by an onslaught of gunfire from the badger. The bullets knocked the gun from the terror god's hands and opened his bandages, making him bleed again. Max's plan had worked. The prisoners ran as the Martians were distracted. A few were gunned down, but most escaped. But now Max and his crew had another problem. Phobos was still standing. The Martian soldiers began to open fire at the badger, but Phobos called them off. He then armed himself with his spiked club and said, "They're mine." "Drive, D-drive, drive," Hedger shouted. Max didn't need to be told twice. He took a 180-degree turn and slammed the accelerator down as far as he could, sending the badger racing down the way they came. But Phobos was not about to let them go. The bronze giant ran after them in a blind rage. "Phobos, we are to stay on target," Deimos shouted, but Phobos was too enraged to listen. Deimos turned to his men and said, "Continue your mission. I will bring him back. We will return once that truck is obliterated." He went streaking through the air after Phobos. As Deimos caught up, he raised his staff to use his fire magic to burn the truck to a crisp. But Phobos shouted, "No! They dared to shoot at me. I will smash them to bits myself." Rex had changed his hand to its gun mode and was firing at the two gods, giving chase through the back door. But it didn't do much good. What was even less helpful was Hedger screaming, "We're all going to die," every few seconds. Mia sat in the passenger seat, trying to help Max navigate through the war-torn streets. But it was no good. The two gods were gaining on them fast. It would take a miracle for them to get out of this alive. Then they saw him. Up ahead in the empty streets, a man stood right in the path of the truck. A man both Max and Mia recognized. A man they could never forget. He stood complexly covered in black, wearing a long black-buttoned trench coat with a hood. Underneath the hood was the skull-shaped helmet which they still saw in their nightmares. Affixed on his right hand was the deadly sickle-shaped blade. Max slammed the brakes so hard that it sent Rex and Hedger hurtling to the front. He tried to control the wheel as the badger drifted to a halt. They watched as the man in black walked right past them to face the two gods chasing after them. Mia tightly grabbed Max's forearm and said, "It's him." There was no doubt that it was the same man that caused the bloody massacre back in Vulcan. The man in black walked fearlessly towards the two gods, and soon he faced Phobos. The terror god, though, was too engulfed in his rage towards the ones who shot him to concern himself with the man. In his fury, he swung his spiked club at the newcomer, but the club never made contact. Instead, it just passed through a wisp of black smoke. And just like that, the man in black stood behind Phobos. "Phobos, forget the truck," Deimos advised. "We have more pressing matters." Phobos turned around to spot the man in black again, while Deimos landed behind the man to surround him from opposite sides. Teleportation magic, not a skill easy to master. "I didn't know Athena had such mages under her wings," Deimos said. The man in black did not reply. "Nothing to say?" Deimos mocked. "Just as well. You will be dead soon enough." Then he attacked. Flames erupted from the tip of his staff, covering anything in front. But the man disappeared again, this time to the left of Phobos. The terror god swung his weapon on spotting him, but the man kept teleporting away from both their attacks. Maximus and the others were watching the fight unfold from within the truck, too scared to make a move. They were trying their best to stay silent when a voice behind them said, "Nice ride." "Ah!" All four of them screamed in unison as they turned to find a young man with messy hair wearing a t-shirt with a cartoonish sphinx asking, "Why did the chicken cross the road?" peering at them through the back door of the truck. "With beds and everything," said the man as he stepped inside. "Do you guys go camping in Tethys?" No one answered him, but Rex did react by pointing his gun at him. "A gun? That's cute," said the man. "But before you shoot me, could we maybe go somewhere else? Like say to where three gods aren't trying to kill each other?" Maximus didn't know who this guy was. He looked not much older than himself, but his instincts told him he was much more dangerous. But Max also knew he was right. They had to get out of here. Max started the engine again and said, "Don't take your eyes off him," as he began to drive as far away from the battle as possible. The man, on the other hand, sat down on one of the beds, making himself comfortable and watching the battle of the gods through the still open back door. Only once, when the battle could no longer be seen, did he turn to the others and say, "I think introductions are in order. My name is Hypnos." Thanatos easily dodged anything the gods of fear and terror could throw at him. Neither the club nor the flames were a match for his speed and teleportation. It was his brother who had convinced him to take on the two Martian gods. Hypnos wanted to protect the man who had foolishly attacked the gods to save the innocent, but the death god ignored this request. Then he explained that since they could not secure an allegiance with Athena, crippling Ares' forces would be a useful move for the underworld, though this might have just been a clever excuse to get his first wish. Thanatos saw the logic in that. So here he was fighting two of the best that Mars had to offer, and he was not impressed. He could have easily dodged their attacks till the end of time, but they were still gods and his scythe blade was not enough to do much damage to the two Martians. Well, at least not in this form. He teleported a bit further away from the fight and readied his stance. Phobos and Deimos seemed worried but not scared enough to walk away from the fight, so they charged. That's when Thanatos summoned it, and a chill filled the air. His scythe blade began to transform, growing larger in size. Its handle dug into his forearm, tapping directly into his godly power and feeding the scythe. The blade emitted wisps of black energy now, and a large closed eye appeared where the blade met his arm. He had summoned the scythe blade's awakened form. Suicide. It looks like he's pulled out suicide, Hypnos said. They had just parked the Badger in an abandoned garage and stepped out to stretch their legs and to plan their next move. They had introduced themselves on the way, but hadn't spoken a word after, until now. What? Max asked. The guy you saw before, his blade can take different forms. The one you saw is called Homicide, and it looks like he just upgraded it to Suicide. Those Martians must be tougher than they looked. By the way, do you guys have something to eat? I'm fresh out of poppy seeds, Hypnos said. Maximus understood what he said, but he didn't care about that. Rex was even less impressed. Why don't you start by answering some of our questions first, he said. Like what? Hypnos asked. Like who the heck is that murderous psychopath in black? Mia asked. That's my brother, said Hypnos. Oh, sorry, Mia said nervously. No, murderous psychopath sums him up nicely. But I think I have a better answer to your question. His name is Thanatos, leader of the 5 capo regimes of Don Hades and god of death. Maximus wasn't surprised by this. Hephaestus had mentioned this would be the case back in Vulcan, but this was the first Rex was hearing about it, and he panicked. He raised his gun at Hypnos and said, Then you're a goddamn underworld spawn. Hypnos sighed. You know we citizens of the underworld are so misunderstood. Then at the snap of his fingers, Rex fell to the ground. Max was about to draw his blade, worried that Rex might be hurt, or worse, but then the Minotaur began to snore. He's asleep, Hedger said, poking Rex's snout with his tail, but it didn't wake him. Well, he was getting all riled up. I didn't want him doing something stupid, Hypnos said. Plus he called me a spawn. But Max had drawn his blade. He didn't know what he could do against someone who made Rex fall asleep at the snap of his fingers, but he felt better with the sword in his hand. That's a fancy sword, kid, but you might be a bit out of your league, Hypnos continued. I'm a capo myself, and the god of sleep. Then he went over to Rex and tossed him into the truck like he weighed nothing, saying, Can't have him sleeping on the floor. A god. Max knew he couldn't take on a god. He lowered his blade, but he still didn't sheath it. So you're the god of sleep and your brother is death? Hedger asked nervously. Thanatos gets such a bad rep being the death god, but you know underneath that skull-shaped helmet made from the bones of his victims, he's a nice guy, Hypnos said as looked out the window. I hope he speeds things up, though. I don't know about you lot, but I can't wait to leave Athens. Maybe you should go help him. He might be in trouble, Max said nervously. It was a long shot, but he might just leave. I would know if he was in any serious trouble. It's a twin thing, I guess. But thank the gods we're not identical, am I right? Hypnos said, laughing. Besides, he's using suicide. He hasn't even bought out the big one yet. The Legions of Athena, Chapter 33. Achilles knelt behind a demolished building, panting for breath, covered in dirt and sweat. He had just pulled Odysseus out from the wreckage of his mecha to safety, but the battle was not over, and Achilles did not have time to rest. Though his Styx armor seemed untouched, it too had just withstood a great ordeal. Beside him sat Odysseus, unable to move with 2 fractured ribs and a broken leg. Around them, the 2 mechas that survived the initial barrage now lay as scrap with their drivers dead. Only Argos, Achilles, and Theseus still stood engaging Hercules. Just like old times, Odysseus said, gasping for breath. I remember us winning the Trojan War. If you ask me, nobody won that bloody war, except maybe the gods. Odysseus said, No, I meant you having to save my rear. Hercules had crushed the general's mecha. It was just too big a target. Odysseus would have ended with it if Achilles hadn't dashed in to save him. But Hercules had wreaked enough damage on Mr. Nobody, as evident from his broken ribs and leg. I always knew that one of the Omega-7 would be the end of me, Achilles said. Odysseus chuckled, but that just made his chest hurt more. He searched his pockets and pulled out a pack of cigarettes. I thought you quit, Achilles said. I did. One of the soldiers handed me this pack back when we thought we had won this war. How wrong we were. Seems a pity to let this go to waste, though. Odysseus placed a cigarette in his mouth and asked, You still got that souvenir of yours? Achilles knew what he was talking about. He took out the lighter he carried with him since the Trojan War and lit the cigarette for his friend. Behind the building they hid while Theseus and Argos still fought Hercules. Achilles would join them soon once he caught his breath. After all these years you still carry that. Some might call it a fitting trophy. You know it's not. I know. It's the token of the most unlikely friendship in the world, between Achilles and Hector, Odysseus replied. You know if you had led the Greeks and Hector had led the Trojans back then, We could have avoided that damn war. If it wasn't for Agamemnon's stubbornness and Paris's stupidity, we could have still avoided it. Life is just full of ifs, Achilles said. True, but you didn't have to kill him. He killed Pat, my own blood. There was no other way. You always told me Hector was the greatest combatant you ever faced. Do you feel different now that you have faced Hercules? Achilles got up and readied his blade and shield and said, no. Odysseus knew that would be his answer, the rivalry that had turned to respect, which could only occur when two men were truly equal. The general smiled as he closed his eyes. As he did so, he remembered the symphony of blades written by Achilles and Hector. Hercules stood sweating. He hadn't exerted himself for years, but then he expected nothing less from Theseus. But even the Minotaur Slayer was not worthy to face his true power. The metal dog attacked again. It was quick, which had made it interesting, but he was tired of playing with it now. So with one swift strike of the lion tamer, he beheaded the beast, sending its artificial head flying into a building. But still Theseus remained. The Athenian champion was a bloody mess, but he still kept coming, swinging that great axe of his. Hercules knew he was a stubborn one, and that he would not back down till he was dead. Theseus had been entertaining, but he had already taken so much beating. It was time to end his misery. Hercules planted the lion tamer into the ground to face Theseus with his bare hands. The Athenian saw this as an opening and charged with his axe. Hercules did not even bother blocking the attack, and the axe did not even scratch his lion fur armor. But Theseus was too close now. Hercules grabbed him by the collar with one hand and gave a hard punch to his torso with the other. Theseus plunged bare-chested to the ground. His armor had been ripped off his body and remained where Hercules held it. This time Theseus did not get up. Hercules tossed aside the broken armor and retrieved the lion tamer to end Theseus once and for all. But the black swordsman stood blocking his path now. I was wondering where you were hiding. Though if you had any sense you would have run far away from me, said Hercules. Achilles did not answer. Instead he readied his blade and raised his shield, ready for the attack. So be it. I am tired of playing as well, said the Olympian. In an instant Hercules charged, but it was different from before. Achilles was able to dodge his strikes before, but he was much faster this time. All he could was block. Achilles faced a barrage of hits from the massive club. He blocked most in time, but a few got through, and if it wasn't for his armor, the fight would have already been over. It wasn't just speed and strength either. His strikes were skilled and precise, leaving no opening for a counterattack. Surprised? Hercules asked. I had slowed myself down before to keep things interesting, but I once caught the Ceryneian hind, the fastest beast on the planet. Keeping up with you is child's play. Achilles guarded the best he could, but shots still got through. Then it happened. Hercules brought his fist down hard, and Achilles blocked it with his Terra shield. But it left him open for the second attack. Hercules thrust his lion tamer straight at his bionic leg, crushing it completely. Achilles pulled back and tried to remain standing. His bionic leg had broken off and his left leg was a stump again. He knew the fight was over. Before he could even ready his shield, Hercules struck again. Grabbing the lion tamer like a baseball bat, he swung it hard at the crippled hero, sending him barreling across the field, dropping his blade and shield as he did. Hercules walked up to the shield and picked it up. The legendary Terra shield forged against Troy, made from the black metal found in the river Styx. Unbreakable in nature. Hercules began applying pressure to the shield, and to Achilles' shock it began to bend, and then a loud crack, and the shield had broken into two pieces, one in each hand of the Olympian. Guess the legend of the shield is nothing compared to the legend of Hercules, he said. Now let us see about your unbeatable armor. Achilles could not believe that the shield that had survived so much had been broken, but his armor was a different story. Though the shield and the armor were made from the same black metal, he knew that even Hercules would find it hard to break. Perhaps it was this thought, or perhaps it was the thought of his imminent death, or being challenged by such strength. Achilles felt that which he dreaded the most all his life. He felt the armor breathe. He knew how easy it would be to let go of his rage once again, to let the armor of Styx breathe once more. He could let go of it right now. He could let go of everything. But something stopped him from doing just that, and it was Hercules. Hercules was no longer occupied with Achilles. He seemed distracted by something far away and was looking blankly in another direction. Achilles felt it too, the sudden spike in energy from far away in the direction Hercules was staring at. There seemed to be another powerful player in Athens, one that could perhaps even challenge Hercules. Hercules turned back to Achilles and said, I am afraid I do not have time to test your armor. Something more interesting has just presented itself. With one great leap, Hercules took to the air, heading towards the direction of the new challenger. Achilles couldn't believe his luck, but it seemed he wouldn't have to use his final trick today. A pity, because Hercules would have enjoyed it. With whatever strength he had left, he held back the armor of Styx and laid it to rest once more, right before he fell unconscious to the floor. The owl's nest stood in a fraction of its former glory at the center of the city. The castle was completely deserted now on the orders of the goddess. Not a soul could be found anywhere within it but one, Athena herself. The goddess of wisdom sat on her throne watching the doors. She was still weak from the battle with the Draken, But there she sat again, dressed in her armor, with her spear in her hand. Her castle was wrecked, her city was destroyed, and her subjects scattered. She had no doubt her end would come soon, but she was glad about one thing: the charade was finally over. She no longer had to serve her mentor's killer. She could die with pride, knowing that she at least never gave up on finding the truth, just like Themis had taught her. After the great Titan War, the three brothers had carved up the domains. Zeus formed the Council of Olympian Gods, the highest honor one could receive. Themis was offered a seat among the Olympians by Zeus for her service against Cronus, but she had declined. She had said she only wished to serve justice, and had founded the Sisterhood of Libra to fight for the underprivileged and downtrodden. Athena had met her after becoming an Olympian herself, still a young god in her hundreds. She idolized Themis completely, as did many others. In a world ruled by men, she had proved that a woman could be just as fierce and just as powerful. Naturally, Athena jumped at the chance to join the sisterhood, and her adoration for the Titan of Justice only grew as she worked with her. Themis was the beacon of light for the oppressed and the weak. But all that changed when Ares attacked her kingdom of Justitia. But Themis never asked the sisterhood for assistance. She had said the sisterhood was formed to help the underprivileged, and not for her private battles. Still, Athena did not worry. She knew Ares was no match for Themis. So imagine her shock when she found out about her teacher's death, killed by Ares, they said. But Athena did not believe this for a second. She knew someone else was involved. She never stopped searching for the truth, even after the sisterhood dissolved, and even with refuges of Justitia running to her for protection from Ares, she still hunted for her master's killer. She found him. The man who had killed Themis was the same man whom she had pledged her loyalty to as an Olympian god, Zeus. There was never a moment in Athena's life where she felt so powerless. She had found the killer, but she could do nothing. He was Zeus, the Sky Father, the most powerful being alive. Athena never found out why Zeus killed her, but she knew no one could go against him. So for years, Athena politely bowed to the God King, hiding her grudge and biding her time. An opportunity arose to get back at the Thunder Emperor, in the form of Daedalus. For reasons of his own, Daedalus wanted protection from Zeus and came to Athena for aid, and the goddess gladly provided it. It was not much, but denying the king of the gods of the inventor was all she could do for her cause. A move she was about to pay for dearly now as she heard the loud thundering footsteps approaching the throne room. But amidst this war she had found hope, a hope that justice might still prevail for the murderer of Themis. For the boy had lived, the boy named Maximus. But now the time for nostalgia and hope had passed, for the doors had swung open, and the god of war was facing her in his blood-red armor. She rose from her throne to greet Ares, and readied her spear for one last time. The Legions of Athena, Chapter 34. Deimos was finding it hard to breathe. There was an unnatural coldness in the air. The air felt thicker as well, and his magic seemed harder to cast. No doubt it was all the doing of the skull-face god. The fight had changed when his scythe transformed, and Deimos had felt it. The dark, unnatural energy from it had made him cautious. But his partner Phobos had been thick as ever and charged head-on. A mistake he paid for in the form of many wounds. He stood beside Deimos, barely standing, too bruised to even speak. The scythe had so easily pierced his bronze skin defense. But what worried Deimos the most was the fact that their opponent was still toying with them. But he was still clever enough to walk away from a losing battle. I don't know who you are, but it would seem you are a worthy warrior. I know you are not one of Athena's lackeys, so we will give you a chance to walk away, Deimos shouted. How merciful of you, Thanatos said as he raised his scythe once more. The unnatural weapon seemed to be made from flesh and blood, with its handle pulsating as though it had a heartbeat along with its closed eye. You do not understand the danger you bring upon yourself if you kill us, Deimos said in desperation. We serve Lord Ares, and he will hunt you down in vengeance. How pathetic. Is this what the gods of fear and terror have been reduced to? Pleading in the war god's name, Thanatos said as he slowly moved towards them. But I do not blame you. After all, what is more terrifying than the end? What is more fearful than death? Power, a man shouted from the nearest rooftop. Then with one great leap he landed in between the three gods, smashing the ground below. He then rested his giant club on his shoulder and said, My power. Relief washed over Phobos and Deimos as they realized who had come to their rescue. Ha ha! Deimos laughed, saying, You should have run while you had the chance, for your fate is sealed. Now you face the God King's personal warrior, the champion of Olympus. With one single swing of the lion tamer, both Phobos and Deimos fell to the ground hard, barely alive. The man then turned back to Thanatos and said, I apologize for their intrusion, but a challenger of your caliber must not be kept waiting. Besides, I need no introduction. I am Hercules. Never heard of you, Thanatos said coldly. Hercules smirked at these words and said, Who would have thought the god of death could crack a joke? At that moment, after an eternity, both men felt something they had long forgotten, the anticipation of a worthy battle. 2 Martian soldiers had just reached the rooftop of a 5-storied building in the military district. On seeing the terrace, the first said, "Well, this is as good a vantage point as any. Set the sniper rifle up, Rollo. Assuming that this building doesn't get demolished while we're still on it," Rollo said. "It won't," his partner replied, annoyed with his constant complaining. "Cindy, look around and tell me what you notice. There is a shocking decline in the number of buildings standing upright since we breached the city. How can I not worry?" Rollo said. But Cindy didn't reply to Rollo's latest find, as she had just spotted something behind the water tank. She signaled Rollo to shut up and follow her lead. They approached cautiously with their guns ready to find. "A girl," Cindy said, surprised. "What's a girl doing here?" The girl in question was unconscious and in really bad shape. Cindy checked her vital stats to find that she was still alive, though. "She's kinda cute," Rollo said. "You know, once you clean up all the blood and dirt." "Is her arm supposed to bend like that?" "Would you focus for 1 second?" Cindy snapped. "Well, she's an Athenian soldier, but that's not the regular uniform. Maybe she's one of those jetpack flyers. That would explain why she's on the rooftop. Maybe she fell from the sky. Would explain her injuries," Rollo deduced. But Cindy recognized the 8th Legion's uniform, and this wasn't it. Then she remembered. By the gods, no, she's a mecha driver. What's she doing all the way up here, then? Rollo wondered. "Don't know, don't care," Cindy said. "Come on, there's no need for us to kill her. She won't live long anyway. But let's find another rooftop." "So we're just going to leave her?" "What do you want us to do? She's the enemy," Cindy shot back. Rollo might have been extremely skilled with a rifle, but she always felt he was too soft to be a soldier. "But she is a mecha driver. That could be useful." "To whom?" "You know Mars doesn't take prisoners if we can help IIT. I meant for our cause," Rollo said in a serious tone. Cindy thought about that for a moment. The 1st Legion were the best Minerva had to offer, plus they were all trained in mecha engineering in case of emergency repairs. She could be useful, assuming she survived. But what Rollo was saying was impossible. "Hypothetically, let's say I agree with you. How the hell are we going to get her back to Mars?" Cindy asked. "Well, if we take off her clothes," Rollo began. "Be very careful of the next words out of your mouth, because there's no way I'm letting you strip a helpless girl." "Hear me out, woman," Rollo shouted. "There is extra armor in our Jeep. Once you dress her in those, we could sneak her back into camp and have a medic we trust look at her. We can get her back into Mars in the back of a cargo truck." Cindy considered this for a while, a long while. It was plausible, and the chances of getting caught were slim, but if they did, their heads would be on a spike. "I don't know, Rollo. Seems like an awful lot of trouble to go to for a stranger," she said. She knew his heart was in the right place, but the risk was too great. Trouble we may be rewarded for with gratitude if we save her. "And you know as well as I do, we need all the help we can get," Rollo reminded her. Then with a grin, he added, "Besides, she's not a complete stranger. Her name's right here on the uniform. Says Elisha." 2 blurs traveled through Athens, causing destruction as they went. To the naked eye, this was all they were. Blurs, one black and one roughly golden. Only when they clashed were they visible for a second, Hercules and Thanatos. Their fight had left the spot where they first encountered, and now the two stood in an empty, wide street, surrounded by identical buildings, each 4 stories high. They stopped their skirmish for the moment, but the fight was far from over. "As expected from the leader of the Capos, your skills were not exaggerated. You shall be a glorious addition to my legend," said Hercules. Thanatos did not reply, but he knew that there was reason behind his arrogance. He had never faced someone like him. His strength, speed, precision, and instinct were all flawless. He couldn't even spot a weakness. Furthermore, the death god was at a clear disadvantage. He was an assassin. He fought from the shadows, often killing his targets before they were even aware of his presence. An open battle such as this was not ideal for him, while Hercules was someone who thrived on it. But none of this mattered. No one escaped death. Thanatos teleported. He reappeared at point-blank range behind Hercules and struck, but missed. The champion had dodged on instinct, but Thanatos kept up the offensive to prevent a counterattack. "You seem so keen on striking me, so I will let you, as a sign of respect," claimed Hercules. The death god aimed suicide straight for the heart, but this time Hercules did not dodge. He did not block it with his club, and the scythe struck his lion-faced chestplate, but the blade did not pierce through. Thanatos pulled back immediately to a distance. "As I suspected," said Hercules, "my armor is made from the fur of the Nemean lion. Even when I crushed its skull and broke its neck, its fur remained unscathed." Thanatos calculated on this information. The suicide could not pierce the armor, which meant the only exposed vital points he could strike were the neck and face, but Hercules guarded them too well. "So, perhaps you should take this fight more seriously," Hercules suggested. His eyes were unforgiving. Thanatos lowered suicide. He understood what he meant. It seemed he had insulted the Olympian by holding back. "Your scythe blade is a demonic weapon, is it not? Forged from dark magic and linked directly to your body and soul. But they say a demonic weapon has a soul of its own as well. And I can feel it from your scythe. Its killing intent," Hercules said. "So why do you hold it back?" Thanatos still did not speak. But he knew what Hercules said was true. His scythe blade had been screaming to be released ever since the battle started. But he disliked it, his death scythe's final form. It did not suit a silent executioner such as himself, but now his opponent did not leave him any choice in the matter. Thanatos stretched out his blade arm to the side and whispered, "Genocide." The air grew thinner at his words, and a sickening chill spread across the street. Though the sun had only begun to set, it grew darker, much darker. The scythe blade began to transform again, this time growing larger than a guillotine. It now stretched longer than the hand it was fixed to. Its handle had merged with its wielder's flesh, making the blade a part of the death god's body. Dark energy danced around him now like black lightning. The blade opened its eye, its sick ice-blue eye with only a black slit for a pupil. The eye looked around frantically until it fixed its sight on Hercules. Thanatos found the whole thing too flashy for his taste, but the genocide had its merits. The death god disappeared again, and a smile appeared on Hercules' face. This he would enjoy. He appeared inches from Hercules, too close for anyone to dodge, anyone but Hercules. He managed to scrape away from the strike, but for the first time since he entered the war, Hercules was on the defensive. He felt the pressure with each strike. Thanatos had gotten faster, and he no longer felt safe enough to test his armor against the new blade. The death god teleported with such agility that he found it hard to defend himself in time. But he still held on. The air grew even colder as the battle progressed, and frost now covered the surroundings. Yet Hercules hadn't even managed to strike. A swipe from the genocide had made him drop his club, and he had to double back for the blade to miss his neck. The fight had grown very interesting for the Olympian. Without the lion tamer, he could no longer block the attacks. All he could do was dodge. He had clenched his fists in hopes to land a strike, but Thanatos was too quick and he teleported too often to get a lock on him. Then it happened. The death god teleported right above him for a strike from above, and Hercules dodged, but before the strike had reached anywhere near him, Thanatos teleported again. This time, crouching right in front of him, he thrust genocide straight for the heart. This time, Hercules could not dodge the attack. The scythe blade pierced the golden armor and it pierced the flesh, but it had missed the heart. Hercules had moved just enough for this to happen, but the blade had still found his shoulder, and he felt something that was almost alien to him, pain. Hercules leapt back as far as he could, clutching his wounded shoulder. When he removed his hand again, it was covered in blood. His blood. "Beautiful," said Hercules, examining his hand. "How long has it been since I have glimpsed my own blood? I cannot even remember. You truly are a worthy challenger, worthy enough to witness the true power of Hercules." Hercules closed his eyes and nothing appeared to have changed, but Thanatos felt it, the change in his adversary. His energy felt heavier, and his presence was nearly overwhelming. The air began to quiver around him, and the ground trembled. Thanatos could not tell what was happening, but he did plan to find out. The death god charged at him with genocide aimed for his throat. But just when genocide was inches away from flesh, Hercules opened his eyes again, and his bright golden pupils were missing. His eyes were pure white now, just like his father's. "Herculean strength," he said, and before the genocide could close the tiny gap to the neck, his fist slammed into the death god's torso, sending him hurtling through the air. Thanatos only came to a stop when he smashed into a building, but the impact was enough for the entire structure to collapse on top of him. But he wasn't done yet. He teleported out just in time, but when he appeared again on their battlefield, he did not spot Hercules, and then he felt his presence right behind him. He turned and tried to slash the Olympian, but he was too slow. Hercules had his large fist around the death god's throat, crushing it. Then with his free hand he made a fist. Thanatos tried to teleport to safety, but for some reason he couldn't. "Do you like it, death god? My Herculean strength?" Hercules jeered. "It is truly a rare sight to behold and impossible to survive. I am afraid my grip is enough to disrupt the flow of energy within you. So, teleportation is out of the question." Saying that, Hercules brought his clenched fist down upon the skull-shaped helm, again and again and again, until even the indestructible helm began to crack. But Hercules halted his assault and said, "Your weapon was quite impressive, this death scythe of yours." He then grabbed genocide and began to pull. The scythe had already become part of the wielder's body, but that wasn't enough to stop Hercules. He ripped the blade right off with the flesh and tossed it aside. The weapon reverted back to its smaller homicide form without its master's power feeding it. The death god's right arm was bleeding profusely, and the wound was deep enough to see bone. He still did not scream, but he did not have the strength to move either. Hercules tossed him to the ground and went to retrieve the lion tamer. "A fitting battle, Thanatos, and not one I am likely to forget," Hercules said as he picked up his club. "But now it is time for you to be immortalized in the legends of Hercules." But Thanatos couldn't respond. He had already lost his consciousness. As Hercules raised his club for the final blow, he said, "And what a legend it shall be, Hercules, the man who killed death." "Insomnia," someone roared. A blade pierced Hercules on the shoulder. He didn't know what shocked him more, that he had just been attacked, or that his attacker wore a t-shirt with a cartoon on it. The newcomer jumped back immediately, but he still stood between Hercules and Thanatos. He still had his sleek symmetrical blade raised, protecting the fallen death god. "You struck me where the death god had already wounded me, knowing full well that your sword could not cut me otherwise. How shrewd," Hercules said. I do get creative when someone tries to kill my brother, Hypnos said. Oh, the brother of death and a blade named Insomnia. You must be the capo known as Sleepwalker. Hypnos, god of sleep, Hercules said. Hypnos did not expect Hercules to know so much about him. Most people did not even know the code names of the 5 of capos. But he wasn't surprised. The man was the champion of Zeus. There was not much the God King did not know. Would you kindly stand aside and let me kill the Reaper? Unlike your brother, I doubt you could offer me a suitable challenge, Hercules said. Hypnos had no doubt he was right. Thanatos had always been the stronger fighter, and though Insomnia was an excellent blade, it was not a demonic weapon like his brother's. However, it did have the unique ability to put weaker foes to sleep with one cut, a trick that did not even faze Hercules. But he wasn't about to stand aside and watch quietly as his brother gets killed, so he retorted, "Won't know till I try." Maximus, Hedger, and Mia were crouched behind a wall watching Hercules and Hypnos. They were hidden within the ruins of a building, while Rex was still asleep in their truck nearby. They had still been hiding in the empty garage when out of nowhere Hypnos said, "Something's wrong. My brother just summoned genocide," and ordered them to start the Badger again. And now here they were, watching the champion of Zeus about to fight against a capo regime of Hades. "We have to get out of here. Now," Hedger said, shaking in fear. "That's Hercules, and he just defeated a god, the god of death no less." "We are in way over our heads here," Mia added. The two of them were trying to convince Max to return to the truck and leave Athens as fast as possible. But Max wouldn't agree. Whatever the reason, the two capos had saved their lives, and it felt wrong to abandon them. But now on watching Hercules, another thought passed through his head, a darker thought. "Guys, if Hercules is here fighting, then where is Achilles?" he wondered. Neither of his friends answered. They all knew that Achilles, along with Odysseus and Theseus, had gone to confront the man who broke the Aegis, which was clearly Hercules. But if Hercules was still here, then what had happened to them? Maybe they never found him, Mia said, but even she didn't believe that. Warriors at their level would have no trouble tracking someone down, especially someone like Hercules, who wasn't even trying to hide his energy. The only logical solution was the worst-case scenario running through Max's head. "He killed them," Max whispered. "You don't know that," Mia countered. "They might have escaped." "Do you really think Achilles would run from a fight?" Maximus said, standing up. He was feeling strange again, like an emptiness, like how he felt back in the arena. "What are you doing? He'll see you," Mia said, pulling at his arm, but Max shrugged her off. "You guys take the Badger and get as far away from here as possible," he said as he drew his blade, and it was hot and burned bright crimson. "Max, what are you doing?" Hedger said, alarmed. "That is Hercules out there. Facing him is simply impossible." "I know," Max said as he stepped out of the ruined building. "But I'm tired of running." The Legions of Athena, Chapter 35. Hercules was about to face the second capo when he sensed someone else approaching them. It was not someone of remarkable power either, not even a demigod level like Theseus and the others. But this made him curious as to who would be stupid enough to approach this battlefield, and he saw him, a boy. He was really young, and he did not just look young like Hypnos. In his hand he held a sword glowing with crimson energy. There was nothing remarkable about the boy, but Hercules sensed something was odd about his presence, like an unnatural anomaly. The boy walked up to Hypnos and stood beside him. Then he raised his sword against Hercules. "Kid, are you suicidal? This is no time to play hero," Hypnos said. "I came to help," Max said simply. "That is freaking Hercules. You can't help, and I don't have time to protect you as well," said Hypnos. "Don't worry, you won't have to," Max said. Hypnos wanted to argue, but there was something about the kid that stopped him. He seemed like a different person. He had that look in his eyes, a dark look of determination that would not listen to logic or reason. "Your funeral, kid," Hypnos said. "Just don't get in my way." Hercules couldn't believe that a child had just raised his blade at him. The sight made him laugh. "I do not know what misguided fortune has brought you here, boy, but leave now. I do not wish to fight an infant." "Why? Are you afraid of me?" Maximus asked. "You are suicidal," said Hypnos. "Brave words," Hercules said, "but you will not find glory here." Maximus did not respond. He knew he was dead the moment he decided to fight. But like he said before, he was tired of running. Right now, at this moment, there was something liberating about facing his death head-on. So he readied his stance. Hercules smirked. "Or perhaps you will find glory," he gloated as he raised the lion tamer. "For what greater glory awaits a worm like you than to die at the hands of Hercules?" "Hercules! Is that what you call yourself now, bastard?" A voice echoed. Hercules froze. For a moment he thought his ears had deceived him, that he had imagined it. But no, he was certain. Someone had said it. Someone had dared to insult him with that word. The grip he had on lion tamer tightened. Whatever amusement he had felt earlier was gone and was replaced by rage, a psychotic rage that could not be quenched. He turned to find the source of these words. The air shimmered, and there she appeared, standing lean and tall, wearing purple hooded robes and her mysterious white mask, Madame Hex. "What did you call me?" Hercules snarled in a deep and dangerous voice. His pure white eyes were fixed on the woman. the very earth trembling beneath his anger. "Bastard," she repeated. "That is what you are you not? You can become the champion of Olympus and shout that you are the mighty Hercules all you want, but the truth will remain that you are Heracles, the bastard son of Alcmene." "Kid, I take it back," Hypnos said. "She's suicidal." Maximus agreed with the sleep god. Everyone knew that Hercules was born a bastard, but no one spoke of it, and especially not to his face. Once, long before he became champion, a king had jested about his fatherless birth. Hercules had killed the king, his entire family, and destroyed his kingdom in his fury. Max didn't know what Madame Hex was doing, but she certainly had the Olympians' attention. Hercules stood there in disbelief. He had not been called that for so long. No one dared even utter it around him for centuries. Here this woman had reminded him of the past he tried so hard to forget, and he struck with such speed that mortals could not even see it. But he did not reach his target. A few feet away from the madam, Hercules had been brought to a halt. Long, wide ribbons had wrapped themselves all around him, stopping him in his tracks. The ribbons came from everywhere and were made from everything, from the concrete buildings to the ground and the tarred streets. Everything around him seemed to be coming to life and snaking its way to bind him. "That's one of the hardest forms of magic one could master," Hypnos said in disbelief. Matter manipulation, but even the world turning against him, was not enough to overcome the rage of Hercules. He ripped the ribbons to shreds and freed his club. "I will not forgive anyone who dares call me that. Not even the gods," he shouted as he swung the lion tamer. But the club did not reach Madame. It was held back by the ribbons that had reformed to bind the champion just as quickly as he had torn them apart. But the force from the swing alone was enough to push back her hood and crack her mask. "Then it is my fortune that I am not something as puny as a god," the madam said as her broken mask fell to the floor. "I am a titan," she pronounced. At those words, the ground below Hercules turned liquid. The tarred road he stood on behaved like quicksand, and he began to sink into the black murk. No matter how many he destroyed, more ribbons appeared, pulling him deeper into ground until he could not be seen anymore. Madame Hex took a single step onto the liquid tar, and it turned solid again, not even leaving a trace of its metamorphosis. She walked directly over where Hercules had sunk, with her silky raven black hair falling across her shoulders and her beautiful oval face held high. She walked straight across the field with her deep purple eyes fixed on Maximus. Mia and Hedger had come out of hiding now and ran to Max's side, but Mia was not her usual self. She seemed shocked, afraid, and excited all at the same time. You're Ray," Mia said at a loss of words. "Hecate," Hypnos completed. "The Titan of witchcraft." Silence followed these words. A Titan. They were all supposed to be dead or locked up in Tartarus for eternity, and yet here one stood, and seeing the kind of power she possessed, one had to admit it was hard to picture how the Titans lost in the first place. "Yes," said Hecate, "but I am afraid we do not have time for long introductions. My spell will not hold Hercules for long." She then began to move towards the fallen Thanatos. In an instant, Hypnos had his sword at her neck as he said, "That's as close to my brother you need to get. We have a Titan back in Pluto, with the weight of the world on his back, and his body in chains. Don't make me add you to the collection." "I do not fret at such empty threats, young one," Hecate said. "I mean him no harm. If I wanted you dead, I would have let Hercules end you." Hypnos hesitated for a moment, and then removed his blade. Hecate bent over and put her hands on Thanatos. His bleeding stopped immediately, and with a wave of her hand, the homicide floated back to its master and latched itself on the death god's hand. "That is all I can do for now," Hecate said, rising. "But he is still far from healed. Forcibly removing a demonic weapon is not something most would even survive. He is strong, this one, but his soul is deeply scarred." "Why are you helping us?" Hypnos asked. He still had not sheathed insomnia. "Not without reason, young one. I require a service of you. Though I have heard all the unpleasant rumors about the underworld, I have always known Don Hades to be a man of his word. A trait I hope his capos follow," Hecate said. "And what will you have me do?" Hypnos asked. "Protect him," Hecate said, looking towards Maximus. "Him?" said Hedger in surprise. "Me?" said Max, just as shocked. "Hypnos, I will have your word that the boy and his friends will safely make it out of Minerva," declared the Titan. Hypnos did not know what was going on, but he did not like the thought of owing a Titan for his life. So the sleep god nodded in agreement. "As much as I appreciate all that you have done, why are you going to all this trouble for me?" Max asked. Sadness entered the Titan's eyes as she said, "I must do at least this much for Themis." There it was again, that name. Maximus thought Themis. "But who is that?" he asked. "A long time ago, I, along with Athena and a few others, were part of a group that wanted to save the world, the Sisterhood of Libra. Themis was our leader. She was a Titan like me, the Titan of divine justice. She was also a fierce warrior, a fair ruler, and a brilliant scientist," Hecate said with a sad smile. "But to you, Maximus, she was something much greater. She was a mother." Maximus felt as though his insides had turned to lead. He stared at the Titan, unable to process what she had just told. He had a mother. A million questions filled his head, but he couldn't find his voice. I wish I could tell you more, but there is no time, Hecate said. But I shall give you this, a parting gift. Hecate. He moved close to Maximus and touched his chest, right on his heart. He felt something ignite inside him. For a moment he felt himself awakened, as though something untamable arose inside him. Then just as quickly the feeling disappeared. What was that? Max asked. All will be revealed when the time is right, Hecate said. But before she pulled away, she whispered something into Max's ear so only he could hear. Trust the voice of the blade. Hecate stepped back and turned to all four of them. You must escape the city in haste. There is nothing more for you here. Mia, you are a gifted witch. Do not let your talents go to waste. Mia blushed at these words and said, Yes, madam. Hecate then turned to Hypnos. You will make sure they leave the country safely. It was more of an order than a request, to which Hypnos nodded. I must go now. I must try to save as many as I can, and you must leave as well. My spell already weakens and Hercules stirs towards freedom beneath us. Once he is released, there will be nothing more I can do. With that grim reminder, and a shimmer in the air, Hecate disappeared. The Legions of Athena. Chapter 36. High in the skies above Athens, it seemed to be the only battlefront Minerva seemed to be winning. It was greatly thanks to the commander of the 8th Legion, Icarus, who fought as though possessed. Icarus had just single-handedly taken down 3 more Stymphalian riders with his guns. Their leader Eris had already retreated from battle, and Icarus had pulled away from his legion to take care of another host of the bronze-beaked birds. His body was plagued with fatigue, but that was nothing compared to the burning rage inside him. The news of his father's death had turned him berserk, and the Martians were at the receiving end of his onslaught. The Stymphalian riders came at him with everything they had, but it was not enough. Icarus outmaneuvered them at every turn. Soon enough he had claimed the lives of 5 more birds and their riders. Icarus was just about to return to his legion when he heard the sound of applause above him. When he looked up he saw him, floating high above the clouds and clapping his hands. The man who had caused him so much pain, the one who had burned the very flesh off his body, forcing him to live his life inside a bronze suit. The sun god, Apollo. Very good, Icarus, Apollo said mockingly. You have improved so much since we last met. Icarus couldn't believe it. He felt as though it was fate that had dealt this hand, finally a fitting target for his rage. Finally, a chance for his long-awaited vengeance. Icarus charged at the sun god, emptying his clips, but the bullets did not even faze him. But he expected this. He dropped his guns and drew his bronze daggers and charged straight for Apollo's heart. It happened so quickly that Icarus did not even see it. In an instant, Apollo had closed the distance between them and bashed his fist into his bronze chest plate. The blow sent Icarus plunging through the air, dropping his daggers in the process. But Apollo was not done. Before Icarus could regain his balance, Apollo grabbed both his wings and pulled him up. The sun god then placed his foot on his torso and jeered, My Icarus, what were you thinking? Just because your daddy is dead, it gave you the strength to challenge an Olympian god. Apollo then pressed down on his torso with his foot while holding his wings in place. The bronze wings were ripped straight off Icarus, and he fell to his inevitable death. But Apollo still wasn't finished. It had greatly annoyed the sun god that Icarus had survived their first encounter. He had also recently learned that Achilles, who he thought he had killed, had also survived. This time he would make sure his opponents were dead. He reached out his hand, summoned it, the holy bow of the sun god, the shooting star. Aiming directly from above the falling Icarus, he took aim. Poor Icarus, Apollo said as he pulled his bowstring. It seems you flew a bit too close to the sun. And he fired his bow and watched as his arrow made of pure sunlight pierce straight through Icarus like a laser beam, leaving a gaping hole where his heart used to be. Icarus was dead long before he hit the ground. Apollo put away his bow and looked down upon the war-torn city of Athens and said, I'm bored now. It's time to end this war. The ground trembled and split apart as Hercules used his massive strength to escape the witch's trap. He leaped out of the long fissure he made, back to the street where he had defeated Thanatos. He was beyond enraged. But Hecate was no longer there. Neither were the capos or the boy, and he really needed someone for the lion tamer to crush. It took you long enough, a voice said from above. Hercules found Apollo descending to land besides him. Guess the rumors were true about Athena giving refuge to Hecate then, said the sun god. Apollo, where is the Titan witch? I will annihilate her for her insults. Hercules shouted. Calm yourself, champion. We do not have time to deal with her, replied Apollo. I do not fear any Titan or their cheap magic tricks. Hercules bellowed. No, Hercules, you do not fear the powers of Hecate. Trust me, if you ever had the pleasure to meet my teacher, even you would respect the word Titan, Apollo said. Besides, we already have our mission from the God King. Athena awaits us. Where once the owl's nest had stood tall and proud, now only wreckage remained. Whatever had remained of the castle had been completely leveled by the battle between the god and goddess of war. Amidst the rubble both still stood, facing each other with weapons in hand, yet who would prevail was obvious. Athena had already been weakened from her encounter with the Drakon. Her energy had already been mostly depleted when Ares had come challenging her. Despite all his flaws, Ares was still one of the strongest combatants on the planet and an Olympian god. He had no shortage of battle prowess. He had not even revealed half his strength, while Athena already stood exhausted. "Must you continue this facade? We both know I have won," Ares said. Athena responded by hurling her spear at the war god, which he avoided with ease, and the spear landed harmlessly on the ground behind him. Athena knew he was right. She had no cards left to play. Yet she refused to go quietly to her grave. As Ares approached her with his enormous axe, she stood with her head held up high. Athena felt their presence before they appeared, two beings that rivaled the power levels of the two combatants in the castle ruins. She also knew they had not come to aid her. The two beings appeared on either side of the goddess surrounding her, Apollo and Hercules. "Are you not done yet, Ares? This squabble of yours has wasted enough of my time," Apollo said. Athena couldn't help but feel disgusted by the sight of the two newcomers. "Apollo, you who accepted my hospitality and shared meals with me but a few days back, now you stand beside Ares." She spat. Apollo was not fazed by the insult, but the cocky smile that usually graced his lips was missing as he answered. "You and I both know it is not the war god's command I heed. And you mighty champion," Athena said, turning to Hercules, "you who I aided on countless occasions, who I assisted on your harshest labors, this is how you repay me." "My personal opinion on this does not matter. Orders were given," responded Hercules. So there she stood, the mighty goddess of wisdom. Her castle in ruins, her city destroyed, her country defenseless, and her army defeated. She knew there was no escaping her fate. Now that she had accepted the fact, there was no way she was going to beg for mercy. "What are you all waiting for?" she shouted. "Kill me." "No," said Apollo. "He wants you alive." Athena was shocked at these words. Even when she had accepted her faith, even as she stood ready to face death, she was denied her free will. No, she would not allow it. She would not give him the pleasure. She would prove that even the God King could not have everything he wants. Athena's spear levitated to the air behind Ares and shot straight at him. Yet again he dodged it with ease, but this time he wasn't the mark. The spear kept going as Athena used all her might to aim the weapon at her own heart. By the time her three captors had realized what had happened, it was too late. Even with their godly speed, they could not stop her. Then there was a bright light. Athena had hoped it was the light one saw as one's life came to an end. But the spear never pierced her. Someone had appeared from the light and held it back not an inch from her body, but this was no savior. Never had she felt afraid during the war. Not while battling against the Draken or Ares, not even while facing her own death. But now she felt it, fear. The spear turned to dust in the hands of the person who stopped it, as his bare feet slowly touched the ground right in front of Athena. "Must I do everything myself?" said Zeus. The goddess trembled. Even death could not let her escape from his will. Now she would face his wrath. "Poor, sweet Athena," said Zeus with concern. "How can I stand by and watch as my dear daughter tries to hurt herself?" Then Zeus punched her straight in her gut, sending over 10,000 volts of electricity coursing through her body. Athena staggered back and fell to her knees. Even as she did, she knew Zeus had restrained his strength. "Tell me, my dear, why do you challenge me so?" asked Zeus politely. "For Themis," she answered in a broken voice. "For justice." Zeus spoke. Justice, such a heavy word for one to speak, and yet so many shout it without hesitation. Long ago, when Uranus united the world under him, he said he did so for justice. When his son Cronus murdered him and claimed the throne for himself, he too said it was for justice. Even to this day, all around the world, people of every country and race wage war, plunder, and kill. And in their moment of victory, shout that they won because they had justice on their side, and that all the sins they committed were for justice to prevail. What they do not realize is that justice is created by the victorious. And in this world, which I hold in the palm of my hands, my word is the truth, my wish is the law, and my will, whatever it may be, is justice. And then the God King snapped his fingers. At his command, a bolt of lightning shot from the sky straight at Athena. The impact of the attack was enough to flatten every building within a 10-mile radius. When the smoke cleared, Athena lay motionless in its wake, but she was still alive. Zeus had made it so that the attack would leave her within an inch of her life. Ares, Apollo, and Hercules waited patiently for their orders. As Zeus slowly ascended into the air, he directed, "Champion, bring her to the capital in chains. Bring her to Olympus." Just before the God King disappeared in flash of lightning, he spoke the same words that Athena had uttered just hours before, only this time it was true. "The war is over." The Legions of Athena. Chapter 37. Achilles awoke on a mat on a hard metal floor and sat up, his body aching and exhausted, yet mostly unburied, thanks to the black armor which he still wore. The first thing he noticed was that he was moving, and looked out to find that he was traveling on one of the highways leading away from Athens. He seemed to be in the back of a large truck which was part of a convoy of similar 18-wheelers and many other vehicles racing away from the city. The inside of the container he was in was not empty. On one side there was the large head of the mechadog Argo, and on top of it a polecat sat licking his paw. Near that, the broken pieces of his Terra Shield's remains. There were a few more people around him, mostly Minervian soldiers. Some lay unconscious on mats just like him, while others were huddled together in a corner, all of them injured. Right beside him, resting upright against the wall with a broken leg and his entire torso being held together by bandages, was Odysseus. "Awake at last," said Odysseus, without a trace of his usual optimism. "What happened?" Achilles asked. "What do you think happened?" "We had our behinds handed to us by Hercules. Would have bled out if that polecat hadn't bought us help. I meant with a war." Odysseus looked out the window at the passing fields. Then with a deep breath he said, "We lost quite spectacularly, I might add. Minerva's army has been reduced to meager thousands. 6 out of the 8 legion commanders are dead, including Icarus, not to mention the countless officers under them. Our champion lies in a nearby truck battling death. Athena lost the battle against the war god and has been captured, and the once great capital city of Athens has been reduced to ashes." Achilles processed the information. They had been annihilated, and with Athena captured, there was not even hope for a counteroffensive. All they could do was run. Achilles wanted to stand only to remember that his left leg had been reduced to a stump again. "What about Maximus and the others?" he inquired. "Not sure, but they're not with our convoy. They did leave early, though, so there's a good chance they made it out alive," Odysseus said, and Achilles nodded in agreement. Now he could only hope that the mission he had given Max would not be too much trouble. "Did not expect to be still alive, though," Odysseus said. "Thought for sure that I would have died at the hands of Hercules, or perhaps yours." Achilles understood what it meant. It did not come to that. Before our fight could end, Hercules found a more worthy adversary. Who? Don't know. But judging from what I sensed, he was more on the Olympian level. Odysseus sighed. "I guess the silver lining in all this is that at least you're not drenched in black again," he observed. "I wouldn't be so sure, old friend," Achilles said. I felt it breathe. For a moment Odysseus displayed worry, then he calmed himself and said, "We have enough troubles at the moment, so let us handle this one when the time comes." Achilles nodded to this. He pulled out his summoning crystal and tapped it. But the armor did not disappear. Instead, the crystal vibrated and sparks began flying from it. Then it exploded, littering the floor with its tiny shards. This took the 2 Greek heroes by surprise, and Odysseus said, "It seems it does not want to be caged anymore." The Badger barreled through the Minervian roads, heading south. Night had fallen as they left the smoldering ruins of Athens far behind them. Maximus was at the wheel, and he was driving much faster than he normally did, as though trying to outrun some invisible ghost, but no one said anything. No one had spoken much since they left Athens, and Maximus was fine with that. The last thing he wanted to do right now was discuss about all that Hecate had said. Hedger was resting in one of the top bunks, still a bit shaken by the war. On the bed below him lay Thanatos, as stiff as a corpse. Mia was using whatever healing magic she knew on him, but the death god had still not regained consciousness. Hypnos was with them as well. He had not left his brother's side since the drive began. On the bed next to them was Rex, still snoring away. Hypnos had offered to wake him, but Max told to let him sleep. If he awoke now, they would have to explain everything that had happened, and Max really did not want to at the moment. Maximus may have been driving at full speed, but it was impossible to concentrate on the road. His mind kept wandering to everything he had just learned. He wasn't just an orphan anymore. He had a mother, and she was a titan. He still couldn't believe this. It made no sense to him, no matter how long he thought about it. He slammed the accelerator again, hoping to outrun his thoughts. It grew darker, and Max was forced to slow down. The roads were getting worse the further they went south. Hypnos had said that he had a boat docked in one of the small fishing villages on the Minervian coast, and that's where they were heading. The plan was to use it to leave the country as fast as possible. Hedger was now fast asleep, hanging from a hook fixed on the truck ceiling. Ajax had thought of everything when he fixed up the Badger. Mia had just finished doing all she could for the death god, and now she sat beside Maximus on the passenger seat. It was obvious she had something on her mind, but she tried to keep her mouth shut. She had never been good at that. "How are you holding up?" she asked. Max sighed. "Mia, I don't think now's the best time." Mia was quiet again for about a minute before she said, "You know Achilles is going to be all right. There's no way we survived the war, and he didn't." Max did not say anything, but he nodded. "Besides, Hecate said she was rescuing more people. She would have helped Achilles and Odysseus if they were in trouble," Mia continued. "Is she really that special, this Hecate?" Max asked. "Max, Hecate is the titan of witchcraft and the very first witch in history. You could say she invented spells. She's the one who wrote the first witch's grimoire. She's probably the strongest magic user in the world," Mia said excitedly. "I still can't believe we used to make fun of her back in the Ham's canteen. I should have asked for an autograph." But Mia quickly fell silent, seeing the look on Max's face. She realized he was wondering how much truth was there in the Titan's words. "Hey, whatever happens, we will figure it out together, all right?" Mia said seriously. Maximus noticed the look of concern in her cat-like eyes. Suddenly he felt ashamed for making her worry so much. He forced a smile and said, "Yeah, all right." Mia smiled at this, which made her look even more feline. But at least she didn't seem so serious anymore. Max knew a smile suited her better. Mind if I join you two lovebirds? Hypnos asked, finally leaving his brother's side. Mia blushed furiously at these words. We are not a couple, she half shouted at the sleep god. Oh, I just assumed, my bad, Hypnos said with a laugh. How's your brother? Max asked. Well, he'll live to brood another day, but when he'll awaken from this coma, I can't say. The scythe blade Hercules ripped from his arm was no ordinary one. It was a demonic weapon, said Hypnos. Mia gasped at this, but Max remained clueless. Demonic weapons are magical objects and are tied to the user's soul, Mia explained. It creates a direct link with the user so strong that they can't even be too far away from it. Forcibly removing one that had merged with its master would usually kill a person, Mia explained. Hypnos nodded. Luckily, my brother has always been a tough nut to crack. I'm glad he'll pull through, Maximus said. It's the second time he saved us. Second? Hypnos asked. You must be mistaken. My brother's not the saving type. Maximus explained their brief encounter with Thanatos back in Vulcan City. Hypnos was genuinely surprised. And here I thought everyone who ever met him was now a corpse. Guess it's a small world after all, Hypnos said. Speaking of the world, have you decided where you're headed? Both Maximus and Mia were silent. Though Hecate made it clear they had to leave Minerva, they didn't know where to go. Until a few months back, Max hadn't even left Mars, and there was no way he could return there. The only place they could think of was Vulcan, but Ares would have the country on lockdown to prevent refugees from escaping. I'm sure you'll think of something, but for the moment, I might suggest making a petrol station our first stop, Hypnos said. He was right, they had been driving for hours, and the tank was almost empty. Luckily, they found a pump with a 24-hour mini-mart. Hypnos filled the tank while Max and Mia decided to visit the shop to grab something to eat. Maximus hadn't realized just how hungry he was until he entered the shop and saw the food. They began browsing, and soon enough, Mia picked out a couple of cans of tomato soup, while Max grabbed a large bag of chips, a bottle of cola, and a chocolate bar. That's going to be your dinner? Mia said disapprovingly. It's not like they have smoked ribs here, he said, and Mia rolled her eyes. So any idea on where we should head? She said, still looking through the shelves. Maximus didn't know where they should go next, but he did know that there was something that had to be done. Well, for starters, Achilles assigned me a mission before we left. This got Mia's attention, and Max pulled out the small metal cube and showed it to her. I've seen this before, she said, examining it. This was on Daedalus's necklace, and Max nodded. What is it? Mia asked. Not a clue, said Max. But right before Daedalus died, his last words were to destroy it. Achilles tried with his blade, but it didn't leave a scratch on it. So now we have to find a way. Mia looked uncertain, but she nodded in agreement. I think Hedger has a book on ancient artifacts on his e-reader. Maybe we can find something in there. Maximus wasn't sure they would find anything, but it was as good a place as any to start. Just don't tell anyone else about it yet. I don't want Hypnos knowing about it. You don't trust him? He's a god from the underworld, and trustworthy is not the word that comes to mind when dealing with the biggest mafia on the planet, Max said. They were about to head to the counter when Mia pulled him back and asked, Wait, do you have the rest of the necklace with you? Max wasn't sure why she asked, but he nodded and pulled out the necklace from his pocket. With the stones and the broken watch in the middle, it looked like junk. Wear it, Mia said. Why? Max asked. He still had it as a keepsake for Daedalus, but he didn't want to wear it. It looked really stupid, because those aren't just rocks, they are alchemic ruins, one of which I'm sure offers protection from sleep spells. Max's eyes widened. That would be useful, considering we're traveling with the god of sleep. But maybe you should wear it. Mia shook her head. No, in case we get double-crossed, we'll have a better chance if you're the one awake. Maximus wasn't sure, but he thought Mia had just complimented him, and that was a first. She must really believe it was for the best if she said something so drastic. Max reluctantly wore the multicolored junk necklace. They paid for their groceries to the half-asleep old satyr at the counter, and headed back to the Badger, where Hypnos was already done filling the tank. Once they were done snacking, Hypnos offered to take the wheel, and Maximus let him. Being the god of sleep, he could go for months without even a nap, it seems, a luxury Max did not have. Max thought it would be impossible to get some shut-eye with the bumpy roads and Rex's unrelenting snores, but the moment he climbed onto the top bunk, he fell straight asleep. It wasn't the peaceful, dreamless sleep he had hoped for. Instead, he now stood surrounded by darkness. Great, Maximus thought, now he shows up. How nice of you to come once everything is over, Maximus said. At first, there was silence, then the voice spoke. There were too many powers at play during the war. I did not want to risk detection. Swell, Max said. So you were right about the storm, not that it did much good in the end, not when the one who made it was the most powerful creature on Earth. As history has proven on countless occasions, it is near impossible to deny the will of Zeus, said the voice. You knew Zeus was behind all this early on, didn't you? I suspected it, the voice said, but I've learned to never believe anything with unwavering certainty. It makes one blind to the truth, and you are the living proof of that, Titanborn. What did you call me? Fate plays a strange hand, for who would have dreamed the child of Themis would survive? So it's true then? My mother really is the Titan Themis? Yes and no. What is that supposed to mean? All that talk about my lineage you always knew. I had my doubts, but now it is not important, young Titanborn, said the voice. What is important is that you have inherited the will of Themis, the will of divine justice. You are really not helping clearing things up here, Max said. Perhaps that is because I cannot explain it all myself, the voice said. But I know who can. Who? Max asked. The Flame Thief. And who the heck is that? Max asked, but no reply came from the darkness. He knew the voice had disappeared again. Trust the voice of the Blade Hecate had told him, not an easy task when the voice was a temperamental lunatic. Maximus stood there alone in the darkness, thinking about just how strange his life had become. But he had made a promise, so he would face it all no matter how bizarre it got, so that he could be stronger, strong enough to protect everyone close to him. For that he could no longer be just an orphan, soldier, or scavenger. He would have to become, as the voice said, the Titanborn. The Legions of Athena. Epilogue. Elisha had just woken up, and the first thing she felt was the pain. She had bruises and broken bones all over her body, which made even sitting upright an ordeal. Someone seemed to have bandaged up her wounds, yet it still hurt every time she moved. But she was still alive, and to her that was all that mattered. She looked around her unfamiliar surroundings. She was in a small, damp room, with only the bed she was lying on, and a table to her side. An old ceiling fan spun above her with a slight wobble, and the only exit was an old wooden door facing her. She tried to get up to see if the door was locked, but her injuries made it impossible to stand. Just then the door swung open and a girl entered holding a pillow. She was roughly her age, and had her brunette hair tied in a ponytail, and her skin was lightly tanned. She was beautiful, the kind of girl most guys would trip over, and had amazing hazel-colored eyes. "Oh, you're awake," she said as she entered. She seemed friendly, but Elisha had been trained to keep her guard up. "Where am I?" Elisha asked. "In Mars." The words gave her a jolt. She quickly tried to get back up again, but she was still too weak and she dropped to the floor. The girl rushed over and helped her back into the bed, saying, "Please calm down. It's not what you think. You are not a prisoner here." Elisha realized that there was no way she could even leave the room with her injuries, but she still didn't respond. The girl, however, fluffed the pillow and placed it to make Elisha more comfortable. "Just who are you? And why are you helping me?" Elisha asked. "How rude of me. I haven't even introduced myself yet," the girl said with a smile. "I'm Kayla Evans, and I welcome you to the rebellion." The Legions of Athena. End of book. Links to the books in the bio. Thanks for listening. If you enjoyed this chapter, don't forget to like, share, and subscribe for more. Hit the notification bell so you never miss an upload. See you in the next chapter.